Hello Year 7, this is your very first English assessment task for 2015. The unit that we're studying is poetry, and the assessment task is going to be on writing and representing. The task will be due in week 8 in an English lesson that will be set by your teacher. They will tell you the date that it is actually due, but it is due in week 8. The number of marks on this assessment task are 40. It is worth 25% of your whole year mark. And the outcomes being assessed are outcome 1, where you respond to and compose text for understanding, interpretation, critical analysis, imaginative expression, and pleasure. That outcome 3, that you use and describe language forms, so your poetry techniques, features and structures of text appropriate to a range of purposes, audiences and context. Outcome 5, that you think imaginatively, creatively, interpretively and critically about information, ideas and arguments to respond to and compose ideas. Outcome 4, that you make effective language choices to creatively shape meaning with accuracy, clarity and coherence. And outcome 9, that you use, reflect on and assess your individual and collaborative skills for learning. Now this is the rubric, and this is probably one of the most important parts of the task because this tells you what you need to do in the task. So you'll be assessed on your ability to demonstrate an understanding of different types of poetry and their structures, choose images that represent the key ideas in your poems, and organise, develop and express your ideas using language that is appropriate to your audience, purpose and form in the poems and reflection that you write. So just scrolling down the page now, here's part of the task. There are 3 parts to the task. Part A, the task itself is that you're going to create an anthology of poetry, you're going to make a visual representation, and you're going to write a reflection. So there are 3 things you need to do. You need to write 3 poems, make a visual representation, and number 3, write a reflection. So let's go on to part A. You are to compose 3 poems, and your poems must be original and written by you. One of your poems must be a ballad. Now if you click on this, there's a little link that comes up. You click on that and that will take you to the definition of a ballad and some ballads to show you just exactly what a ballad is. So if ever you're in doubt, you can always come back to that. However, your teachers will be teaching that to you in class. So one of your poems must be a ballad. It cannot be more than 20 lines, and that means 4 stanzas. And you'll understand that once you learn how to write a ballad. All of your poems must be on the topic of nature. And you need to remember to use a series of poetry techniques to enhance your poems. So for example, similes, metaphors, personification, repetition, onomatopoeia, alliteration, symbolism, and any other that you can think of to put into your poems. Now, do all of these need to be in your poems? No, you need to make a selection of what types of techniques best fit the poems that you're writing. Once you've written your ballad, you can then pick 2 other types of poems from the list below, and I'll go through those in a minute. Just a reminder, boys, that you will be given 3 lessons to go through this in class, so your teachers will be spending time making sure that you're on track. Now, in terms of poems, you can do a haiku, a limerick, a cinquain, a shape poem, an alphabet poem, a prose poem, a metaphor, a simile, an ode, a sound poem, an elegy, or a sonnet. Now, your teacher will go through some of these poems with you in class, how to structure them, but they won't have time to do them all. So if you choose one that your teacher hasn't done in class, it's up to you to go and research the structure of that poem. Now, part B is the creative part, and here you are to create a visual representation for all of your poems. That is just one thing that you do that represents all of your poems. And what this representation needs to bring to life are the key ideas of nature in the poems. Now we've given you a few choices of what kind of representation you can create. You can create a poster, a series of photos, a painting, a sketch or a drawing. Now all of these can only be on an A3 size piece of paper or smaller, nothing bigger. I repeat, nothing bigger. Now if you would like to do something in a different form and it's not one of those 4 up there, then you can ask your teacher and they will decide whether they think that is appropriate or not. Then we go on to part C. This is getting towards the end of the task, gentlemen. This is worth 10 marks and it's your reflection. So you need to write a 150 to 200 word reflection of your poems. And we've given you a series of points here that you can potentially consider when you're writing your reflection. So for your 2 optional poems, why did you choose that type of poem? So why did you choose to write a haiku, an ode, a sonnet, or whatever you've chosen to use as your poetic structure? Why did you choose the form of representation for your poem? So why did you choose to do a poster or a painting or a series of photos? What ideas from the poems did you show in your representation? Then you go on to and you explain some of the challenges you encountered in creating your anthology. So were there parts of it were difficult? Were they challenging? You know, did you love the whole thing? And that sort of takes me to the last one, where you explain some of the positives you had whilst completing this task. This is a very creative task, gentlemen, and we really hope that you enjoy doing it. So just to recap, you need to do a ballad, 2 other types of poem, a visual representation and a reflection. I'm now going to briefly go through the marking criteria because this is probably one of the first times you've ever seen this. And so here's the anthology. This is part A, okay? And so to get up in the A range or the extensive range, you need to demonstrate an extensive ability to compose an imaginative and original series of poems. Demonstrate an extensive understanding of the poem structure. So if it's a haiku, it has to have the sequencing of syllabization that a haiku has. If it's a limerick, it has to be silly and ridiculous. And you need to make sophisticated language choices to creatively shape your meaning with accuracy, clarity and coherence. So you have to write it really well. Now you'll see in English we move from extensive to thorough, to sound, to basic, to elementary. And you'll see the different scores that you can receive if you fall into those bands. Now your teachers will circle which area you have received that bullet point in. So let's say your poems receive a thorough. And then the teacher marking it says, but they were only sound in structures. There were some faults with the structure. But then you had some really well-developed language and it was clear and coherent. They may well put you up here. They then look at the bullet points and decide which band you fit into. Are you a thorough or are you a sound? But that will be very clear when you get that back from the marking teachers. This part, the representation, is part B. And this is your visual representation. So that beautiful thing that you're going to create that represents the key ideas that you have put onto that poster, drawing, painting, whatever you've chosen to do. So a detailed and thoughtful representation of the ideas in the poems, that should be, sorry gentlemen, in the poems, and the creative processes undertaken. And then we go down to the very last part, which is your reflection, which is really going to show us how well you can write at this point in time. And again, we go from extensive to thorough to sound to basic to elementary. And here we're looking at how well you reflect on your ideas that you've put in the poem and your creative process that you've undertaken. So that's about it. Down the end, boys, you'll see the word feedback. Your teacher will, the marking teacher, sorry, will put some feedback there and you'll get a whole mark out of 40. At the end of all of this, the 2 marking teachers will type up a document and that will be shared with you to let you know the positives and negatives of the task itself, and that will be published to you so that you can read that. Gentlemen, we wish you well on this very first English task. Obviously, you're going to need to discuss this with your teachers, and if you are unsure, please do consider the questions that you need to ask of them. But we do wish you well. We hope you enjoy doing the task, and